The moment began with a silence so unnatural that even Superman felt it pressing against his senses. A silence that did not belong to Earth or space or time itself. It was the silence of reality holding its breath. And in the center of that impossible stillness stood a being the universe whispered only one name for. The Beyonder. Before the story unfolds, subscribe to Genesis Vault to dive deeper into the worlds where gods collide and legends are rewritten. Superman had faced cosmic tyrants, impossible threats, and extinction-level foes. But what stood before him now wasn't a threat. It was a question shaped like a man, glowing with the light of a billion universes. The Beyonder, a being whose power stretched beyond the known multiverse, watched the Man of Steel as one might watch a single spark inside a star. At first, Clark thought he was seeing another illusion, or perhaps the work of some fifth-dimensional imp. But then the world around him flickered. For a moment, Metropolis vanished, replaced by an empty white expanse. A void so vast that even light seemed hesitant to exist. And when everything snapped back into place, Superman knew. This was no illusion. This was something far beyond. The Beyonder's voice arrived not as sound, but as understanding. You fascinate me, Kal-El. A being bound by limits, who keeps breaking them. Superman tensed. What do you want? Everything. And nothing. The Beyonder stepped forward, his presence bending gravity in ripples. I seek to learn, to test, to compare the finite with the infinite. Superman's fists tightened. He'd felt watched for days. An invisible presence examining his every rescue, every heartbeat, every thought of doubt and hope. Now he knew why. The Beyonder raised a hand. And suddenly, the sky tore open, not in violence, but in demonstration. Above them, stars rearranged like puzzle pieces. Galaxies folded inward, blooming into fractals of impossible geometry. It was power that didn't follow rules because it created the rules. And Clark felt something he had felt only twice in his life, true fear. Still, he stepped forward. Because that was what Superman did. People are in danger, he said. If you want something from me, leave them out of it. The Beyonder tilted his head, intrigued. You are bold for one so small. In an instant, the world changed again. The skyscrapers dissolved. The city vanished. The oceans evaporated. And then they returned, as if they had never left. Superman realized the Beyonder wasn't threatening Earth. He was showing how fragile creation was to him. How trivial. And yet, his expression carried no malice. Only curiosity. When you lift a mountain, the Beyonder said softly, you feel strain. When I lift a universe, I feel nothing. Superman exhaled slowly, keeping his voice steady. Then why test me at all? What could someone like me possibly teach someone like you? For the first time, the Beyonder seemed unsure. That, he whispered, is the experiment. The ground broke apart beneath Superman. Not from destruction, but from transition. The two were suddenly standing on the surface of another world. A barren sphere orbiting a dead sun. A testing ground older than recorded time. Here, the Beyonder announced, you will show me the meaning of challenge. Superman activated his full senses. The environment wasn't real matter, more like solid energy shaped by thought. It was a battlefield forged by a god who didn't understand limits. And wanted to. Clark knew he couldn't win. Not against someone whose slightest wish could erase him from existence. But winning wasn't the goal, not for him. Survival. Protection. Understanding the rules. That was his path. The Beyonder raised a finger, and the planet cracked like glass. A shockwave erupted, vast enough to pulverize continents. Superman shot forward, pushing his speed beyond light, beyond plasma, beyond the limit Kryptonians were meant to reach. He held the planet together for a moment, just long enough to redirect the explosion upward. The Beyonder laughed, not cruelly, but almost delighted. You repaired a world designed to die. Interesting. Then he flicked his wrist. Gravity multiplied 1,000 times over. Superman crashed into the ground, the force nearly crushing his bones. Even his Kryptonian physiology, adapted to hold tectonic plates, strained under it. But Clark forced himself to rise. Every inch a refusal. "You're testing strength," Superman growled. "But strength isn't just force." The Beyonder watched him silently. Strength of heart. Strength of choice. Strength to stand against the impossible. That was what Superman was built on. Not the power of a yellow sun, but the vow of a farm boy raised to do what was right, no matter the scale. Superman launched upward, punching through the multiplied gravity. He struck the Beyonder and felt something strange. Resistance. Not much. Not enough to hurt him, but enough to prove a point. The Beyonder looked at the place where Superman's fist had landed. "You expected nothing to happen," he said. "Yet you struck anyway." Superman wiped the dust from his face. "Because someone needs to show you that power without purpose is empty." The Beyonder paused, and the silence that followed was heavier than all the gravity he had conjured. Then, without warning, he unleashed something new. Not force. Not heat. Not matter. Possibility. Superman felt every version of himself at once. Dozens. Hundreds. Infinite echoes. Some triumphant, some tragic, colliding in his mind. Worlds where he never left Krypton. Worlds where he died as a child. Worlds where he became tyrant, savior, or myth. The Beyonder's voice echoed in the storm of reflection. "I see your potential. I see your flaws. I see the boundaries you refuse to break, even when you could." Clark staggered as the images swirled. But one stood out. His parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, smiling at him from a memory untouched by cosmic chaos. And that single memory grounded him. "I am who I choose to be," Superman said, pushing back against the tide of possibilities. The Beyonder stepped closer, studying him like a rare phenomenon. And then reality cracked. A ring of white energy erupted behind the Beyonder, forming an expanding halo of annihilation. Superman's instincts fired instantly. Whatever this was, test or not, it could erase more than this world. Could reach Earth, Lois, everyone. Superman lunged forward, trying to intercept the wave. The Beyonder watched, intrigued, and as the energy raced outward, swallowing stars, Superman made his choice. He flew straight into it. The white wave consumed everything. It wasn't light. It wasn't energy. It was erasure, a state where ideas died before they could become reality. And Superman flew directly into it, feeling his very existence peeling at the edges. For a moment he felt weightless, boneless, thoughtless, as if he were slipping out of the story of the universe. But then something pulled him back, the choice he had made, the memory of Earth, the voices of millions who depended on him, the echo of Lois whispering his name across the gulf of possibility. And with that final anchor, Superman forced his body through the annihilation wave, shattering it like fragile ice. The void trembled, reshaping itself into a broken shell of space. The Beyonder watched him emerge, glowing with ripples of cosmic dust. "You destroyed my wave," the being murmured. "A wave designed to unmake infinite layers of existence." Superman steadied his breathing. "Then maybe you should stop throwing things you can't control." The Beyonder smiled, not offended but fascinated. "You assume I ever wish to control anything. I only observe." Superman shook his head. "People aren't experiments. Everything is an experiment," the Beyonder replied softly. "Even your existence." The stars behind him flickered, rearranged, and then froze as though time were contemplating whether it wished to continue. Superman had seen celestial horrors, but he had never witnessed time hesitate. "You jumped into erasure," the Beyonder said. "Why?" "Because there was a chance someone else could be hurt. And that," Superman stepped forward, "is all the reason I ever need." The Beyonder looked almost confused. "You chose sacrifice without certainty, without logic, without guarantee. Why?" Because life matters, Clark answered. Because responsibility matters. Because strength means nothing if it's only used for yourself. The Beyonder lowered his gaze, as though pondering a secret even he didn't understand. In all realities I observe, no power resists corruption more consistently than yours. No heart carries more defiance against inevitability. Superman frowned. Then why keep pushing? To know, the Beyonder whispered. If even you break. Before Superman could answer, the Beyonder snapped his fingers, and the dead world dissolved into spiraling fragments of color. Suddenly they were nowhere and everywhere, standing on the edge of the multiverse, where existence shimmered like a glass ocean. Beneath them, infinite Earths reflected the choices of infinite versions of themselves. And far below, Superman saw his own world. His people. His home. The Beyonder extended a hand toward it. What if I removed this one thread? Superman's heart raced. Don't. Not destroy it, the Beyonder clarified. Simply forget it ever existed. No pain. No suffering. No memory. Superman clenched his fists. Stop playing with what you don't understand. But I understand everything. No, Clark said firmly. You know everything. But you don't understand it. The Beyonder paused. Explain. Superman stepped closer, his voice steady. Understanding isn't about knowledge. It's about connection. About being part of something bigger than yourself. About loving people who can't give you anything in return. The Beyonder looked at him with eyes bright as newborn stars. And you believe this connection is stronger than infinite power? Yes, Clark said. Because power without connection is hollow. And connection without power? That's where real courage lives. The Beyonder slowly lowered his hand, Earth shimmering untouched. Show me. Superman blinked. Show you what? What connection feels like? The man of steel hesitated. What could he show a god who could rewrite galaxies with a stray thought? What could he offer to a being who had never been touched by consequence or hope? Clark closed his eyes, and he remembered. He remembered Jonathan Kent's voice, teaching him what strength meant. He remembered Martha's hands, warm against his cheek when he first discovered his powers. He remembered Lois, fearless and unbreakable, teaching him courage didn't require a cape. He remembered every person he had ever saved, and every person he had ever lost. And then he placed his hand gently on the Beyonder's shoulder. A simple human gesture. A gesture that required no cosmic authority, no rewriting of physics. Just a moment of contact. For the first time in his incomprehensible existence, the Beyonder felt something he had never felt. Something that didn't fit into equations or laws or multiversal mechanics. He felt meaning. The cosmic arena around them trembled, then softened. The Beyonder whispered. I do not understand this feeling. Superman offered a faint smile. Good. That means it's real. The Beyonder looked out across the infinite worlds he had shaped, altered, or studied. I have been alone for longer than your universe has existed. You don't have to be, Clark replied. The silence that followed was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of realization. Then the Beyonder lifted his hand and, for the first time, reduced his power instead of expanding it. The multiverse stopped trembling. The stars aligned. Time resumed its steady heartbeat. You have taught me more in this brief experiment than the sum of all creation, the Beyonder said. Not through strength, but through conviction. Superman exhaled slowly. So, is it over? For now, the Beyonder answered. But know this, Kal-El, your heart is a mystery greater than any cosmos. And mysteries, call to me. Superman nodded. If you ever come back as a friend. The Beyonder smiled, a warm, almost human smile. Perhaps I already have. With that, the cosmic being dissolved into a soft brilliance, drifting into the fabric of existence like a whisper. The multiversal platform vanished, and Superman found himself floating above Earth, the sunrise painting the sky in gentle gold. He looked down at his home, small, fragile, imperfect, and worth everything. Superman tightened his cape and soared toward the rising light, feeling the weight of the encounter settle into something quiet and eternal. A reminder that even gods could learn. Even infinities could change. Even the impossible could be touched by hope. And somewhere beyond reality, the Beyonder watched with something new in his infinite eyes. Respect. Thank you for watching. If you want more godlike confrontations, impossible battles, and cosmic mysteries, subscribe to Genesis Vault. New worlds unfold here, and you don't want to miss what comes next.